Hey, it's great to be with you. I'm actually recording this inside a church. It's a very beautiful, peaceful presence of the Lord here. And I found a quiet corner where I could have a chance to talk with you on my journey on this Camino. I'm sharing with you some reflections from day 2 of my walk on the Camino Frances. And this was from Roncesvalles to Zubiri. And it was a long walk, a hard walk, and it repeated some of the same things that I had shared in the first day. That I spent the first few hours, 2 to 3 hours, praying for my family, principally the Rosary, and just taking my time to peacefully pray the decades well. And um, I was definitely still feeling the exhaustion from the first day. And the second day, I was certainly helped by the presence of these 3 women that I ended up connecting up with. And I've mentioned them in an earlier reflection on the Camino that um, a lot of people who walk the Camino are searching. And there's something about the idea of walking that has a like looking for something quality to it. And in fact, that's principally what I want to share with you today. I've got 4 different meanings of the term of the idea of walking on the way, walking on a pilgrimage. And the first one is focused on the word walking, and that happened because of one of the 3 women that I met on the second day. She was a woman in her 70s, and she is walking the Camino because she felt this call to walk. She just wanted to walk. She didn't necessarily have a destination in mind. She just valued the reality of walking. And I had, thought of other meanings of pilgrimage, like our whole life is a pilgrimage. It has a beginning and an end. We're headed someplace. And then there are different aspects of our lives that have a journey quality, that have a pilgrimage quality to them. But I hadn't heard before what she was saying. She's like, no, no, it didn't have any of those other meanings. I just wanted to get out and walk. And I found this really interesting. It kind of like opened up for me a whole new way of reflecting on the meaning and value of walking. Have you ever thought about that and stop and think about what does walking mean? What does it stand for? What is its purpose? And I've had a chance to be thinking about this over the past week because again, I'm about a week out from when I'm actually did this second day of the Camino. And I do want to say this. This is a theme that I will share over the first 4 to 5 days of the Camino that I experienced at a deeply felt level, at an existential level, and that is respect the limits of your body. Just because you think you can do something doesn't mean you can do something. Just because you think that you can establish a protocol for what will keep your body going doesn't mean that is actually what will keep your body going. And I paid the price dearly for that over the first 4 to 5 days of the Camino. It's only really in the last 2 days that I have recovered a sense of like not feeling sick through the day, and being able to like wake up and say, okay, I'm ready to walk. My feet hurt, but it's a very different thing. It's a very different thing. So respect the limits of your body, brothers and sisters. Learn to pay attention to what your body is telling you regarding the limits of what you can undergo, what you can undertake. So, all right. Uh, when I shared this a couple months ago when I was talking about this on the radio, preparing for the Camino, and I started taking 10-mile walks early in the morning, that I really looked down on the idea of walking. When I would see people walking on the side of the road, I had one of two ideas in mind. The first was that they were too old to be able to run anymore, and so they were doing what they could. Since they could no longer run, now they're walking. Or the second thing was, well, they're not in good enough shape to to actually jog or run, and so they're settling for walking. And so walking was sort of a default sign of failure, a default situation of diminishment. So I had a very denigrated idea, or I denigrated the idea of walking very much. And it wasn't until I incorporated walking, and I only did it because of the Camino, back into my daily life. And it was walking. It wasn't walking fast enough to get like a exercising benefit from it. Like, oh, this is my workout. I'm walking. No, it wasn't that. I was walking as part of my preparation for the Camino, and in doing that, I started to experience just tremendous benefits, and I also learned a ton just about the way in which walking is just connected to our own lives. Um, on the Camino, during some of my more challenging moments where I was really out of it, I did lean on a couple of audiobooks to help accompany me, to take my mind off of how I was actually feeling in my body, and to be able to help me to kind of push forward. And one of them one of them was talking about the idea that our very structure, it's called Born to Run, and the very structure of our makeup as human beings, as men, as human beings, is that, you know, we stand upright and we're made to walk. We're made to take forward motion. This is how we're made, and that physical characteristic of our being, that we're made to move and not just flail around spontaneously, but to actually move in a fluid motion forward in order to move from point A to point B, in order to move forward in our lives. A, a good portion of our lives is connected to the idea of walking. Now, we live in a time where the value of walking as walking has diminished. I pointed that out in my own experience of it. But even just the day-to-day use of walking, like how many people walk to work? Well, if you're working from home, okay, but no, you drive your car, you take a bus. You don't walk to work. You don't really do much walking typically, unless you're in a super crowded city or you have a very particular situation. And I think there's a loss in that. There's a loss in the meaning and value that comes from using our bodies to walk. Well, I started to look at this from a scriptural perspective, and lo and behold, just the act of walking. Let's think about it. When does it first appear in the scriptures? Where does walking first appear? Well, it's in Genesis chapter 3, and it's when Adam and Eve have sinned, and they're in the garden, and then in the cool of the evening, God comes to walk in the garden with Adam and Eve. So the first actor who's doing walking in the scriptures is God. God is shown as someone who walks. And the act of walking is shown to be connected to the idea of, is shown to be an expression of communion, of connection, of communication. I'm walking with you. I'm connected to you. I'm with you. I'm moving forward on this journey with you. And that's the first appearance in the scriptures. Well, let's kind of move a little bit forward and say, well, what's the next appearance in the scriptures of walking? where it talks about somebody who is walking? Well, it is associated with Enoch, one of the patriarchs, in the first few chapters of Genesis, chapters, I think it's 4 and 5, all the way up until Noah, these patriarchs. You have Enoch, who is described as someone who walked with God during life. He's described as someone who walked with God, and it appears in the context that it meant that he was a righteous man, that he was in communion with God, and that being in communion with God is walking with God. And you probably know that he was the one who was seen no more. And instead of saying that he died, it said that he was seen no more and he walked with God. So that even the reality of heaven as this place of perfect communion with God is described in Genesis chapter 3 Genesis chapter 5 as walking. That Enoch walked with God. And it's like, wow, you didn't really notice that before. Well, you can jump all the way ahead to 2 Kings, and you have the story of Elijah, this greatest of the anterior prophets, and his companion Elisha, who took on the mantle of Elijah. Well, what's the story of Elijah and the handing on the mantle, his prophetic, a symbol of his prophetic call and gifting? Well, Elijah said, it's time for me to leave. I'm going to be going to God. And they were walking and talking together, walking and conversing together. And it's interesting because it shows that just before it says that Elisha won't leave Elijah. Well, Elijah ends up crossing the river, and he crosses the river by taking his mantle, striking the water, and the waters part, and they walk across the river. And so you have this idea of the Exodus, right? This idea of crossing through, and it's after they cross through that they're still conversing and walking when all of a sudden Elijah is swept away by the chariots and the horses, and he was seen no more. He was taken away in his chariot to be with God. And so you have this powerful moment, one of these really key moments in the Old Testament of this key figure, and it's connected to this idea of walking, of walking, just the act of walking. The act of walking has many meanings, and we'll talk about those meanings. You can walk as a pilgrim, as a penitent, and making acts of reparation. You can walk. Think about in the Mass, we have a walk that's a procession in. That's a walking, a processing in, and a recessing out. We have a walking that is a way of constructing the idea of the journey of life. And I'll talk about these other meanings of walking, this fundamental structure of life having a point of departure and a point of arrival, and that we're on this journey. So that's also a sense of walking as well. Well, then you have this idea of making this specific walk that I'm making here on this Camino, which is a way. So the Camino of Santiago de Compostela is a way. It's a way that someone walks. It's a journey that someone takes. It's filled with walking. And what I've found is that there are a number of people who are hiking, right? So this is for people who are really invested in making, getting outside and doing hikes. Well, this is sort of an epitome, just a wonderful goal for them to be able to say, I hiked to the Camino, right? So it's a very high bar for them to pursue for tourists. There are some, I haven't met that many. The people who are tourists on the Camino, there are beautiful views, but there is a lot of difficult walking. So yeah, it wouldn't be my preferred path if I'm a tourist. So I'm not a tourist and I'm not a hiker when I'm doing this, but I am walking, and these different layers of meaning are showing up in walking. But as I've been reflecting, and what I'm reflecting with you right now in this particular day to day is the way in which um, uh, walking is built into our structure as a human being. That just our very body is made to walk, that to make forward movement, and that's, I think, connected to the structure of life itself. St. Augustine in his experience of time, and he treats this in his confessions, in his the books 10 and 11. He's trying to describe what time is, and it's this movement from the past to the future through the present. It's this movement. So there's something that's like built into the core of our being that is this movement. And so, there's that other meaning of pilgrimage, that other meaning of that journey, that in our own spiritual tradition, in our Catholic tradition, is the journey within. You go within yourself to be able to understand how to go and encounter God. How do you get to the deeper encounter with God? And that is definitely connected to this idea of walking and of a journey. So I'm taking a look at my notes here as I have, um, let's see here, Adam and Eve, respect your limits. Oh, yeah. You just think about life, right? How many times growing up, my mom said, get off the couch, get outside, do something. The people who are not walking, who are just sort of stuck inside, are the ones who are feeling down, feeling weighed down, feeling depressed. And when you stop moving, you get stuck. I remember seeing somewhere I don't know, some kind of documentary or scientific show that said how